is Doug. I'm the designer of Spy Dice, which is a bluffing and push your luck style game for 3 to 6 players. In Spy Dice, you're all spies receiving messages from headquarters, and you have to decode them so that you can out bluff and guess your opponents. Let's go down to the table real quick and I'll show you how it's played. So at this point, instead of telling you how to play Spy Dice, I thought it would be more useful to briefly describe the journey I went on while designing the game. Spy Dice uses the Liar's Dice mechanic, and so I'm going to assume that you already know how to play Liar's Dice, which is a very old and well-loved game. Even in the 2 years I worked on Spy Dice, I noticed a few attempts at bringing this old classic into the modern age of board games, some more successful than others. My first attempts at my own take on this classic game was to add abilities to each of the dice, so that each time you roll the dice, you would be able to select one of your dice for the ability. And that worked only decently well. It took me several iterations of the game to realize that whatever I added to the game made it too convoluted. I couldn't figure out why it was so difficult to add something new to a simple game. Then it finally hit me. My assumption about Liar's Dice being very simple was a little bit off. Most versions of Liar's Dice involve quite a lot of small rules. For example, ones are wild. If you want to bet ones, you need to bet half of the quantity of dice rounded up. If someone bets ones before you and you want to bet another number, now you need to double the quantity of ones and add one. Many versions include a special round where you can't change the number, unless you only have one dice left because you survived a previous special round, etc., etc. If you want proof of this, just read rules of any published version of Liar's Dice. I think it might surprise you. Once I realized that I needed to strip away everything except the most basic mechanic, which is place a bet, and then you can either increase the bet or call the bet, then Spy Dice was finally able to emerge. What Spy Dice brings to the table is a game that ended up being very accessible to new players, perhaps even more than classic Liar's Dice. In Spy Dice, players don't hide their dice from other players. However, the dice are not classic D6 dice. They have 6 different symbols on them. What players do hide from each other is their decoder card, which gives their symbols unique numeric value that will be different from all the other players. This allows players to see how many of one symbol the other players rolled. They just don't know what number those symbols represent. This allows even new players to grasp what the outcome of the dice might be without needing any knowledge of statistics. There are no numbers in Spy Dice that are inherently wild. Instead, players are able to play accomplice cards to make one of the symbols a wild for all the players. This is where a lot of the excitement in the game comes in. Multiple players may end up playing an accomplice card in one round, so there can end up being more than one wild symbol in a round. And only the player that plays the accomplice card knows what symbol it is. This sudden chaos that is thrown into the game ends up being restrained by the fact that everyone can still see everyone's dice. It's not so much about statistics anymore, but a clever player can analyze the best and worst case scenario when there are multiple accomplice cards in play. Or sometimes players just like to go with their gut feeling, because at the end of the day, Spy Dice is about pushing or not pushing your luck when you're in a tight spot, and sometimes bluffing helps. I'm still a fan of classic Liar's Dice, but I'm glad to say that I think Spy Dice brings enough well-thought-out ideas to the table to make it feel like a modern take on a classic game, instead of feeling too derivative or like an unnecessary variant. I hope one day you get the chance to play to Spy Dice, because I think you'll agree. So that's how to play. Thanks for watching. I know it looks really great and you want to get it published, so I'll let you get to that.